mindful of where our allegiance lie. That's my contribution.
Dr. Lamley, what you just said is so right. So many people wants to get married, they want to have a child, but looking at the time that we live in, unless if we really think that we have a lot of time in this world and we're looking forward to have a marriage or have a family. And I'm shaking my head, I'm saying, wow, I'm not saying it's everybody's wish, especially as a young woman, you get married or you want to have a family, but the timing, think about it. If we're really preparing or we really want to go leave this world, leave this earth, I think for me, if I was still young, I would not be thinking so. I will tell you something. When I had my daughter, and I'm saying, and that was a while back, and even that time, I was so worried and concerned about what if Jesus come today and whatever. I was very much troubled about the whole thing, because every time when I think about the scripture where it says, woe to, to them that give suck in those days, etc., etc. And I was panicky and nervous about the whole thing. And guess what? We're still here. And she's what, 40 years now? And I'm saying, oh my goodness. And since then, I was so worried about the fact that what if Jesus come and everything. So now we nearer, much, much nearer to Christ coming. I'm wondering, I'm thinking, those individuals or people that just getting married, they're not thinking the timing is right on us to say, I'm going to get married and have a child. And poor thing, the babies that come in this world today, I feel sorry for them. I keep saying that all the time. It's like the babies coming in the world to be slaughtered. Sorry if I'm using the wrong term, because that's what the enemy is doing to our children today. And that's why we have to constantly praying for our children and grandchildren. We are living in a sick world, and we don't know. It's the children you have to worry about and think about it. Let alone you should be thinking about your own soul salvation, let alone having babies. Pray that your flight be not in the winter, not on the Sabbath day when you have to flee. If you got to flee, you have to worry about the children behind you. Lord have mercy. Anyway, I don't want to be preaching or anything, but I'm saying these are the trying days we have. I'm not discouraging anybody. I mean, as long as you God gives you the child or the children, whatever it is, so be it. That's between you and your God. For me, where my soul is concerned, I would be very much worried about having babies in this world. So that's what I just back you up with this, and it's sad, but that's the way the world is, and everybody just longing to be to have this and want to do this.
You know, we say we say we want to go to heaven. We want to be with Jesus. We want Jesus to come. But if you look at our planning, most of our planning, let me not say all, because there are some persons who are walking like Enoch, but in general, all our plannings are earthly. Very
Yes.
earthly. We go to school to get a degree. What do you
Mhm.
want a degree for? To go to heaven? No. We go because we want a degree to help us to get a good job. Then we want to buy a car. What do we want the car for? To drive to heaven? No, it's because we want it for this life so that we can
Yeah, for
become.
this life, yeah.
We take out a nice big mortgage. Why? Because we're going to take it to heaven with us? No, because we want to be comfortable in this life, right? And then you want to get married and have children. Well, I guess this would be the easiest one to help us to go to heaven as a family. But is it for that reason? No. When we are planning on getting married and having children, we are not saying, you know what, I want to have a nice little family to go to heaven. No, we want to get married because of marriage itself, and then we want to have children because we want to see the offspring of children. All right. So if you look at our planning, if you look at our hardly, as I said, I will not say it doesn't happen, but hardly ever human beings make plans for heaven.
True.
There's no the investment is not there as the depth of investment that we make for this world.
And you know, Dr. Lumley, one thing I must add to say, most people keep saying, the Bible say, occupy till I come. So in that sense, it doesn't mean to occupy in material things and building up things as what you're saying. So when we have that in the mind or in the frontal lobe of our mind, we're saying, oh, we can occupy till we come. That means continue accumulating stuff and doing things in this life. That's what it takes maybe for many people who think in that way. But as I'm saying, is the timing. It's very late.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, we will be, as long as life lasts, because that's what the Bible says, we will be married
marrying and giving into
and
marriage.
giving
Yes.
into marriage. So the man will
Yes.
be marrying woman and the woman will be giving into the marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be like that. It's going
Yes.
to be like that.
Absolutely.
We are going because since the Lord said it already, it is a reality.
Yeah.
But what we are saying for us who have the opportunity, who can make wise choices, is to know
Wise
that
choices. Yes.
Christ must be the center of all that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, for those who are parents here, look at the career choices that your children are making.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the career choices, they are only earthly. They can't enhance the kingdom of God. They cannot enhance God's kingdom. So when you look at it, and you see that there's no way God can be glorified in this, help them, talk to them,
Mm-hmm.
teach them. You know, don't let them pick a glorified career just so that they can say, I am this, and I am that. Because some training, when you're in school, when you're in college, it pulls you away
Mm-hmm.
from the things that are godly. You go in there and they teach you so only the grace of God kept some of us in university, because I didn't go to an Adventist university,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can tell you that I had to unlearn a lot of things. The only thing kept me in some of those classrooms was that I started going church from I was small. So the
Mm-hmm.
Bible verse, I had to argue with some of those professors.
Mm-hmm.
I argue with them. I just, when Jeremiah said, feel like a fire shut up in his bone. Yeah. When I
Mm-hmm.
go to class and hear the man talking about evolution
Mm-hmm.
and it's a stupid concept to think of a God. And when he's
Yeah.
talking and it just burned my heart, I have to argue with him.
Mm-hmm.
I argue with him. But then I was not the only Christian in the classroom, but I'm the only one talking.
There
Why?
you go. Mm-hmm.
Because every timidity.
Mm-hmm.
Person don't want to be identified as if you're not intelligent, because he said nobody with intelligence
Mm-hmm.
can believe that there is a God in this day and age. So
Wow.
nobody want to look unintelligent, so they keep
Mm-hmm. So
quiet.
they keep quiet. Mm-hmm.
So I'm the one with the big mouth, and I
Well,
said it's not going to happen.
mm-hmm.
And
Those
I
that stand your
argue
ground.
back. I argue back everything. We said, sir, that doesn't make any sense. The Lord said in the beginning, I have to keep talking, keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
Every single class, there was an argument. You
Yes.
understand? So most of our children, the young ones, especially when they're not grounded in the scripture,
Mm-hmm.
our children can go out and they come back as atheists.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Sad.
Atheists. So we have to be careful, and we can lose them. I remember there's a nice, helpful gentleman and elder in the church. And one day the man wept. He said, I have, I have given my children the best career choices. And no, they are doctors. Most of them, they were doctors. Very good career they have. But
Mm-hmm.
none of them was now in the church, and they grew up in the church. He was so
Mm-hmm.
busy sending them to the best school and universities that he lost track of them, that they were not keeping connected to God. And they finished. Doctors and dentists and pharmacists and whatever, and none of them in the church. None.
Sad. Mm-hmm.
And he wept about it, 4 children, and that was the end of the story. You understand?
He did what he had to do. Just
Yes,
educate them, but
educate
they
them.
know better. They
Yeah.
know better. So I'm sure his blood would not, their blood would not be on his shoulders because he taught them in the way of the Lord, and it's the decision that they make, the choice that they make.
No, but you see, one of the things, and this was what came home to him, and what I say to parents, you see the push and the determination that we give to our children to achieve in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Most time we don't give it for spiritual things.
True.
We send them to extra lessons. We send them to do this. We buy the extra book. We do that. We are not even so concerned with when we see them with the Bible in hand and they spend a 2 or 3 minutes. We are happy. But when
Mm-hmm.
the schoolwork, they must set up late in the night. They can stop from church because they're having exams. So they can stop from a Sunday night meeting and a Wednesday night meeting because they're
Wow.
having exam. You
So they,
understand?
in other words, they prepare them for this world.
This world. And many
Yeah.
of us experience. That's what we do.
And what
So
about the parents that help, that send children to our church school, and you think that they will learn in the way that our church school teach them in the
yeah.
right way, and they still broke away. So what do we do? Children have to
Well,
make
well,
their
well,
own
well,
mind.
sis, my children went to church school, and even now my daughter still going to our university.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when she went in church school, you have to hold them even closer.
Exactly.
I
Well,
have to debunk a lot of
oh
things.
dear.
I had to debunk a lot of things because it's a mixed multitude.
Mm-hmm.
Multitude come there, and
Whoa.
for all kind of things happen there. But I said, Father, she passed to go to one of our prominent high school, but I said, no, I'm sending her there because that's what the Lord said, that the worst of our school is better than the world school. So I said, okay, let me do that. All right. And I sent her there.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes, I do that. So, what the Lord asking us to do is to be faithful. Be faithful to Him. Your first allegiance is to your God, and allow Him know when through your faithfulness, as He said as of Abraham. I know my servant Abraham that he will order his household after the ways of the Lord. So once you do, you become vigilant in how you manage your household, then the Lord in His mercies will take care of us. All right. So
Okay.
thank you everyone for participating this evening. Really is wonderful sometime for us to discuss these things, even as we look at more things. All right, and this evening we will be sharing it. Welcome to your multiple replacements. Your this evening your Maranatha Health Education. And as you have seen on your screen, we are looking at diabetes, but I'm not going to look at diabetes from the normal way of diabetes. All right, I don't want us to let me see if I can get into the slide. Slideshow. All right. So normally you give a definition of diabetes, what it is, and how things should be. You're hearing me?
Salam. Doc, can you hear me?
Oh, you're right there.
Oh, yes, I was letting you know. It looked like it didn't realize I'm here.
No, I didn't know you were. So, all right. So you're ready to take over?
Yes, sure, Doc.
Okay. All right. Let me stop sharing and then you can go. All right. There you go.
Okay, can you see my screen, Doc?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we're thankful that you have taken us yet through another day. We're thankful for the manifold blessings that you have bestowed upon us from morning until now. We're thankful that you have brought us together where we can discuss matters of health as we seek to fulfill the text that you are interested not only in our salvation, but also our health. That our social or that we should prosper and be in health, even as our soul prospereth, Lord. So as we seek these things from you, we ask that your Holy Spirit will abide with us, give us, add unto us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, I pray. In Jesus' name, with thanksgiving. Amen. Okay. All right. So as you were shown in the flyer today, we'll be looking at diabetes. Not sure if this presentation has been done here before, but if you have seen this presentation before, then as you know, repetition deepens impression. For we know that in this modern world, non-communicable diseases, which are the ones that that are caused from cancer, hypertension, diabetes, and the likes, they are significantly on the rise. So it's good for God's children to be educated in understanding these matters as it concerns what really causes diabetes and what is it that God has provided for his children to use in case they should be, afflicted with this disease. And as we'll always like to say, one of the best diseases that you can have is diabetes because it is so easy for you to deal with. But before I say anything more, let us get into the meat of the matter. Diabetes, where is the sugar? Now we know that sickness, suffering, and death are the works of an antagonistic power. Satan is the destroyer, God is the restorer. So many times people ask, why is it that God is causing this to happen and why is it and where is God? No, God is not the cause of these things. Yes, he allows it, right? Because there is a law of cause and effect, but it is coming from an antagonistic power, a satanic destructive power. God is the restorer. Satan, he is the one who destroys, always seeking to kill and to destroy. Now, God gave promises in his word. And as he gave those promises to ancient Israel, they are applicable to us even today. And one of these things that he said in his word to ancient Israel is that if they would cleave strictly, keyword here, strictly. What does strictly mean? Follow without any wavering or variation, lockstep, right? Just like Naaman, he was told to dip 7 times. He went and he dipped 7 times. So if we should cleave strictly without wavering, I like what it reads in the New Testament, when Jesus called his disciples, the Bible said that they did not shift to the left or to the right, but they straightway followed after their Lord. So if we would cleave strictly to him and do all his requirements or his commandments or that which you're told to do, he would keep them from all diseases such as he had brought upon the Egyptians. But his promise was given on the condition of obedience. As a matter of fact, all of God's promises are premised upon obedience, the condition of obedience. So if you want to be kept from disease, keep strictly to all that the Lord requires or commands of you. These words spoken to ancient Israel are true today of those who recover, or should I say, who would recover health of body or health of soul. I am the Lord that healeth thee. Exodus 15 and verse 26. And all of you on this platform should know by now that we teach from three perspectives: the Bible, the words of inspiration, and good science, and they are in that order, right? Good science must be submitted to inspiration, which both should be submitted to the authority of the Bible. Now, sickness only comes because of one of these three reasons: for the glory of God, or the violations of natural laws, or the violation of spiritual laws. We're told in Proverbs 26, verse 2, the latter part, the curse causeless shall not come. And we know that disease is a curse. Therefore, we're told in the Ministry of Healing, page 127, that disease never comes without a cause. So for you to have any disease in your body, there must be a cause. Now, what is that cause? We have to make sure that we understand the true definition of disease. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from the violations of the laws of health. So if you're suffering from any disease, we know that the cause is the violations of the laws of health. And what are these laws? Pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, otherwise known as temperance, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power. These are the true remedies, right? And we know what pure air is. We know what sunlight is. We preached on this platform, but it's good to just review them quickly. We need at least 45 minutes to an hour of good, strong sunlight where the UVB and A rays are out between the hours of 10 and 2 o'clock. Abstemiousness, that is temperance, that is the abstinence from anything that injures, hurts, or defiles the body, and the temperate use of that which is good. Rest, we need to make sure we rest our body nightly, right? Some of us struggle with this particular law of health, right? The body during the nighttime is when it does its work of repair and restoration. And this only occurs between the hours, or primarily between the hours of 10 and 2 o'clock. And every hour before 12 is worth 2, right? The body is an biomechanical machine. It needs exercise. It needs what? Exercise, movement of the bodies, especially the very large muscle groups, the leg muscles, you need to keep that lymphatic fluid going. And we know that the lymphatic system is the backbone of the immune system, right? And the blood needs to be oxygenated, imparting to it a rich, lively color, electrifying it. And, you need that exercise, proper diet, most definitely. Fruits, nuts, and vegetables is the diet ordained by God for us, his crowning creation. The use of water, we know soft water. Best water to drink is the water from heaven, right? Which is going to be slightly acidic because of the uh, dissolving of carbon dioxide as it falls through the air. So right away we know that alkaline water is to be, rejected, stay far away from it. Pure soft water, and of course, trust in divine power. These are the true remedies. But anywhere you see the word true, that means there is a fake, there is what do you call it here now? A counterfeit remedy. I'm going to be looking at that. Now, if sickness should come upon you, you find yourself sick, the first thing you ought to do is ascertain the true character of the sickness and then go to work intelligently to remove the cause. How do you work intelligently? You need to understand the physiology of the body. You need to understand the physiology of the disease. What is the root cause of the disease? You treat the disease like a tree. View it like a tree. You want to kill a tree? Do you pick back off the leaves and cut a few branches? No. You dig it up by the root. You destroy the root system. You dig up disease from its roots. You destroy the cause of the disease has to go. If the harmonious working of the system has been caused by overwork, overeating, or other irregularities, what irregularities are those? The violations of the laws of health. Do not, I repeat, do not endeavor to adjust these difficulties by adding a burden of poisonous medication. One of the first things every pharmacist learns is that these medications, these drugs, they are toxic, they are poisons, but if you control the dosage, you can get certain benefits. So what should you do if you get sick? Ascertain the cause of the disease. Unhealthful conditions should be changed. That means you're fixing your violations of the laws of health. Wrong habits corrected. Again, if you're in a habit of breaking the laws of health, you're going to fix them. Then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to re-establish right conditions in the system. This is how we treat disease God's way. And this is the method that we use, a complete healing, Maranatha health. Counsels and cautions: the use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not, unfortunately, willing to give. Nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual, and to the impatient it seems slow. To surrender hurtful indulgences requires sacrifice, and this is where the crux of the matter is, where we are dealing with most of our clients, our friends, our neighbors, and especially those who are of the household of faith, because of a life full of intemperance. They're very slow or very resistant, right, to making a clean break with their hurtful indulgences, because it requires sacrifice of appetite, sacrifice of poor and wrong habits, right? Many times they are impatient. Many of these diseases, especially tonight, we're talking about diabetes, can take 10, 20, 30, 40 years to develop. And yet they just want to do something that makes them whole right overnight. That's not how it goes. Nature's method is gradual, it takes time, and it requires patience, it requires care, it requires effort, it requires diligence, it requires discipline. But if you should choose to exercise all the above, it will be found in the end that nature, when left untrammeled, does her work wisely and well. Those who persevere in obedience to her laws will reap the reward in health of body and health of mind. And again, do drugs cure the disease? The answer is no. We should not resort to adding onto the burden of disease on the body, adding onto that burden the burden of poisonous medicines. And because we're talking about diabetes, we're going to be looking at metformin. Now, in the world today, there is a very weird way of looking at health, right? When sickness arises, the nominal doctor, the common doctor, doesn't go and follow these advice that we are given from the words of inspiration, from the testimony of Jesus, the spirit of prophecy, right? They don't go to ascertain the cause and work intelligently. What they start to do is that they start to attack the symptoms of the disease. Now, diabetes, which we will soon learn, is when there is an abnormal adaptation in the body and there's an abnormal concentration or amount of sugar that is in the blood. What these doctors do is that they try to treat the symptom. They try to work on reducing the sugar, not the cause of the high sugar, but the sugar itself. They are working on the effect rather than the cause. And they give you metformin. What metformin does is that it works temporarily, right? I'm not saying that there's no benefit to metformin. On these drugs, they sometimes give, temporary benefits, right? And what metformin, how it works is that it allows the cells, it works with the cells to allow sugar to enter into the cell. And we soon understand that mechanism, right? It helps to force sugar into the cells. And it usually works for a short time. And what you normally find out is that after a while it doesn't work, and then they start to increase the dose, increase the dose, increase the dose until it no longer works. And that is when you're in a really bad state. Your diabetes is really bad, it's out of control, and then they start to go for the nuclear option, which is to inject insulin directly into the blood. But let us look at what happens. You have one disease, right? High blood sugar, diabetes, and you get a multiplicity of other diseases that they call side effects, from acute infection of the nose, throat, or sinus, taste problems, head pain, nausea, otherwise known as feeling like throwing up, to actually throwing up, vomiting, gas, diarrhea, stomach cramps, swelling of the abdomen, and the list goes on and on. Muscle pain, dizziness, flu-like symptoms, excessive sweating, chills, rashes, and the list goes on and on and on. But rather than paying attention to the counsel, where we're told that too little attention is generally given to the preservation of health, it is far better to prevent disease than to know how to treat it when contracted. By the use of poisonous drugs. And did we not just prove that these are indeed poisonous drugs? And I can tell you, friends, this is just a snippet of the list of side effects, right? It actually goes on for maybe about 5 or 6 pages. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? By the use of poisonous drugs, many bring upon themselves lifelong illnesses, and many lives are lost that might be saved by the use of natural methods of healing. And that is a truth today, right? Drugs and doctors kill more people than diseases, and that is facts. Even if you go to the wise men of Babylon, they will tell you so, right? That is research facts. Okay? Drugs never cure disease. I repeat that. Drugs never cure diseases. They only change its form and location. When it changes its form and location, they call that side effects. When drugs are introduced into the system for a time, they seem to have a beneficial effect. A change may take place, but disease is not cured. Have you ever known anybody who has diabetes or high blood pressure that was cured by that drug? If you do know anybody and you can prove that, my next paycheck is yours, right? I can stand 10 toes on that one, right? Drugs never cure diseases. It will manifest itself in some other form. Uh, somebody's mic is open. Michelle, could you close all other mics, please? Right? So as I'm saying, I'm standing 10 toes down on that one. I'm standing on authority of the words of inspiration. Drugs never cures disease. The disease with the drug was given to cure may disappear, but only to reappear in a new form, such as skin diseases, ulcers, painful disease joints, and sometimes in a more dangerous and deadly form. Nature keeps struggling and the patient suffers with different ailments until there's a sudden breakdown in her efforts and death follows. And friends, I'm telling you, I've seen this with my very own eyes, my very own two eyes, right? Work with a particular client, friend, family member of mine. We brought her back, got her healing, right? Cut a long story short, she did not adhere. The level of patience and discipline required, she wouldn't stand to it. So she fell back into her old ways. The disease returned, right? And she put her faith in the doctors, and I watched her decline. I watched those drugs, 20 drugs. At one point in time, she was on 22 zero drugs. That's a two with a zero, right? Powerful medications. And I couldn't tell her don't take them. And I had to watch her decline until there was a sudden breakdown in the efforts of the body. And death is what follows. And we had to bury her. Intemperance, stubbornness, right? Indulging in appetite, deadly stuff. Trusting in, you know, in the world's way of taking care of disease, putting your faith in these drugs, right? Many of us will end up in early graves because of our disobedience and our lack of self-control, temperance, discipline, and patience, and trust in the simple tools that God has given to his children for us to be healed. So, where is the sugar? What is diabetes? It occurs when the body becomes unable to handle glucose, sugar, which builds up to dangerous levels in the blood. Now, somebody is saying, but we can't live without sugar. That is true, because sugar is used in the cell, in the Krebs cycle, right? to make ATP, which is what the body burns for energy. But that sugar is meant to be inside the cells and not in the blood, right? So when we eat and our body, digests the food and breaks it down to glucose, right? The body works very quickly and assiduously and very efficiently. The body is a well-designed, well-made, efficient machine to put away that sugar, get it into the cells where it needs to be, and sugar level is managed because sugar in the blood, when it passes a certain level, it is a very potent toxin, damages the brain, damages the blood vessels, damages the organs, damages the nerves, right? So while we can live without sugar, we can't have too much of it in the blood. So once your body is no longer able to manage and maintain that blood sugar level at an appropriate level, you develop diabetes. The diagnosis of diabetes is usually made when a blood sugar test is consistently above 7. In Jamaica, we use the millimole per liter, so 7. When you're consistently testing over 7, especially 2 hours postprandial, post-meal, right? You start getting the 8. I've seen things like 19, 20, 24, some crazy numbers, right? You are considered to be diabetic. Your body not managing sugar. How many type of diabetes exists? 8. What are the two main categories of diabetes? Diabetes insipidus and diabetes. I'm always twist up my tongue on this word, so please forgive me for slaughtering this word. Mellitus. I think I got it right a while ago. My tongue did twist on that one. What are these two types under which the 8 different types occur under these two categories? Diabetes insipidus is known as water diabetes or bland or insipid urine, because back in the day, when they used to test for diabetes, the doctor used to actually taste the urine to see if it's sweet. And in this one here, the urine is not sweet, it is bland, it is insipid, right? And it's known as water diabetes, right? And the 4 types: essential, nephrogenic, meaning coming from the kidneys, right? Gestational, having to do with, birth, and dipsogenic. I won't get too deep into all of that. I want to get to the main point. The other type, no, diabetes mellitus, is known as sugar diabetes or honey sweet urine. That's when the urine actually tastes sweet. Yes, friends, the doctors back in the day, before we had those wonderful test strips to test the urine and test the blood, they had to taste the urine. I don't think it would pay me enough to do that. But anyway, I digress. Right. So under this type you have, or should I say under this category of diabetes, you have the other 4 out of the 8, which is type 1, type 1.5, type 2, and type 3. And you realize there that type 3 is actually Alzheimer's disease, right? It is actually a diabetes of the brain. Now, what are the blood sugar ranges? Normal level, that's just you normally, while you're not eating and the body's at rest, you should be measuring between 3.6 and 5, right? And this is what you would normally find, like, in like during, like, long after a meal, couple hours after a meal, right? There's also like in the morning when you just wake up and you test your sugar. For a normal person, you should be measuring anywhere between 3.6 and 5.5. Now, as you begin to develop diabetes, and we soon get into the cause, right now we just want you to understand what is the disease diabetes. As you begin to develop this condition, what you'll find is that that number begins to raise, right? You wake up in the morning after fasting all night, and you find that your blood sugar is like 5.6 and over 7, and you haven't yet had a meal. You're now pre-diabetic. And as the disease progresses, right, as its pathology progresses, you'll find now that you start measuring in the morning that fasting blood sugar test. 7. I've seen like sometimes when we used to doing some close monitoring of some of our clients. I test it in the morning before they eat. They're pushing numbers like 9, 10, 11. That's when the diabetes is really out of control. So let us talk a little bit about glucose metabolism, right? That's how the body deals with and treats in regards to glucose. So we eat our food, and our food is digested, and carbohydrate is broken down into simple sugars. Let me break that down for you. All of us are familiar with Legos, right? Where you take those little pieces, those little blocks, and you join them up together to make some structure, some, some house, a car, whatever. But then again, you can break apart the pieces, and you can fashion something else. All of us who, when we're younger, used to play with Legos, or you have kids, or you have these blocks. Likewise is our food. Our food is actually built up of smaller pieces, right? And when it comes to carbohydrate, these pieces are known as simple sugars, all of them put together to make up these long chain um starches called carbohydrates. And when it gets to the macro size, you actually get like a dumpling, you have your yam, you have your dashin. When all of that stuff is digested, the carbohydrate portion of these foods, when you break apart molecules, you get the simple sugars. The simplest one is known as glucose, right? And that's what your body actually uses. So when you chew up your food, you mechanically break it down, it goes into the stomach acid and the digestive enzymes further work breaking it down through the process of digestion. When it gets to its smallest component, glucose, that is what your body absorbs, right? Now, once glucose hits into the blood, as I said, your body is an intelligent um, electrobiomechanic, electrobiomechanical machine. It actually has sensors, right? Just like sensors, you ever go to a fancy supermarket and you go in front of the door and the door just open, that's because there's a sensor there sensing you. There are sensors in the body that senses the level of glucose in your blood. And once it goes above the resting level, those sensors will send a signal to your pancreas to tell the beta cells in your pancreas. The beta cells are the units that actually create the insulin in the pancreas to release insulin into the blood. What is insulin? Insulin is a hormone, and it acts as an usher. It opens up the doors of the cells for glucose to enter into it. So imagine the cells in your body as a house, right? And that every home has a key, right? And to get has a door. And to get in through the door, you need a key, right? So in this analogy, your cells is a house, right? The door is what you call the insulin receptor, along with, the channel that allows the sugar to come in, and insulin is the key. So insulin comes to the cell, unlocks the cell, and allows sugar to enter into it. That's the simplest way I can break it down. And the insulin comes from the pancreas. Okay? So that is how normal glucose metabolism works. So in the normal person, you eat, your blood sugar rises, the body senses it, it intelligently responds, tells the pancreas release insulin, insulin tells the cells to pick up the sugar from out of the blood, because remember, the body does not want the sugar to be in the blood. It wants the sugar to be where? Somebody tell me. Let me see a quick hand and see if I can give out any A's. We like to distribute A's on this platform. Do we have a hand quickly? Where does the body want the sugar to be? Oh, no, no A's. I have an A. Hutchinson, go ahead. Where does the body want the sugar to be?
In the cells.
In the cell, triple A. And it was an open book test because it's right there on your screen. The body wants the sugar to be in your cells, not in your blood. It's toxic once it rises above a certain level. So that is how normal glucose metabolism works in the body for a healthy person. Now, what happens when you have dysfunctional glucose metabolism, such as in type 1 and in type 2 diabetes? Now, type 1 diabetes happens when your pancreas is damaged, when the beta cells in the inlets in your pancreas no longer work, right? They are unable or incapable of producing insulin. And that usually happens through some autoimmune process, right? Some kind of autoimmune, and it usually happens very quickly. And it tends to happen early on. Most people develop type 1 diabetes in their childhood. It doesn't have to be, because there's also adult onset diabetes. And what we have found really is there is a school of thought that we subscribe to, that it is usually triggered by the diet in early infanthood, especially with the feeding to the baby of cow's milk, right? In the form of whether it's straight cow's milk or what's it called again? Infant formula that is formulated based on cow's milk. Because guess what? No, cow's milk was formulated not for baby Tesmond or baby Dr. Lamley, but was formulated for baby cow. And the last time I checked, we are not cows. And what happens now, if you know anything about milk, is that it carries the signature of the immune system of the animal, right? So for baby human beings, baby Tess, right? Baby whoever, when he gets mother's milk, that mother is actually transferring part of her immune system to the child through the breast milk. Likewise in the cows as it is in the human beings. But guess what? Cow's milk, or should I say, cow's immune system is alien to the body of a human being. And what will happen is that it will trigger an immune response in the child or anybody who drinks cow's milk. And that triggering of the immune system, right? That autoimmune response over time has been found through research to do damage to the pancreas. There are other damages, but I won't get into all of it too deeply because the time is very short, right? But type 1 diabetes is usually linked to some type of autoimmune process whereby the beta cells of the pancreas is destroyed and the pancreas loses its ability to produce insulin, right? So if the pancreas can't produce insulin, then you can't control blood sugar levels and you develop type 1 diabetes. The next one is type 2 diabetes, where the pancreas is working just fine, right? And I want to spend a little bit of time here because this is where the real meat of the matter is, right? The pancreas in type 2 diabetes can produce insulin. But what happens is that the insulin produced, the body ignores it, right? And this is what we call insulin resistance. And how this develops is by, having too much carbohydrates in the diet. So what happened now is that we have a very westernized diet that has a lot of carbohydrates, especially the highly processed carbohydrates, and a lot of glucose is dumped into the blood. So what happens now is that the 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 body has to respond to that situation by prodding the pancreas to produce more and more insulin to deal with this excess amount of glucose in the blood. To cut a long story short, after a while, the cells begin to like say, listen, man, this is just way too much. I already have enough sugar inside and I don't want any more. So as a defense to, filling up the cells with too much sugar, because if too much sugar gets into the cell can actually die. The cell can actually burst from having too much sugar inside. So it will signal back to its insulin receptors on its surface that, hey, listen, no more sugar in here. I don't want any more sugar in here. Lock the door. I don't care. Padlock it, chain it. We don't want any more sugar. Do not listen to insulin. How does the body respond? Because the sugar is climbing up in the blood. So it tells the pancreas, listen, pump out more, pump out more, pump out more. So the insulin is just beating down on the cell doors, so to speak. Open up, letting the sugar, open up, letting the sugar. So now what happens now is that insulin begins to rise significantly in the body. Now, normally, and this is a method that is not often used in Jamaica or by doctors, where they are very quick to test for sugar, but they're not very quick to test for insulin levels, right? And they don't test directly for insulin. And there is another molecule released by the pancreas alongside insulin called C-peptide. So when you want to check insulin levels, you don't check for it directly. You check for C-peptide because its level will be in proportion to the amount of insulin that is in the blood. And normally, you would want a level of like 2 to 5. People who are insulin resistant can have levels of up to like 50 and 80 and 20, 25, we are talking like 20 times, 30 times, 40 times the level of insulin that should be in the blood. And then what happens now is that causes an inflammatory response in the body, right? And it causes a whole cascade of other issues known as metabolic syndrome, right? So insulin resistance causes the insulin levels in the blood to rise to very high abnormal levels, which causes inflammation and other systemic problems in how the body functions, which results in metabolic syndrome. And then from off of metabolic syndrome is where you have a host of other diseases. You get your diabetes, you get your hypertension, you get your cancers, you get your PCOS, you get your autoimmune conditions, and the list goes on and on and on. But for tonight, we are focusing in on diabetes. So diabetes is primarily caused, type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes is primarily caused by insulin resistance, right? Which is the body's adaptation to an intemperate amount of sugars in the blood. I remember sugars come from the food that we eat, the carbohydrates that we eat. Whether they're simple, processed, or complex, too much of it will eventually lead to insulin resistance. So there's something wrong with proper nutrition, which is a law of health. We are breaking the law of health of proper nutrition by having an unbalanced diet. And there's another big contributor that we must mention, right? Which is too much trans fats in the diet, and trans fats we get in our processed foods. Our body uses fats to make the cell wall, right? And the natural type of fat is what we call a cis fat. The processed fat is what we call a trans fat. When you force the body to use this unnatural, man-made type of fat, this modified type of fat, you force the body to take this fat and make the cell walls of our cells become very sticky and very stiff, right? So that they can't respond efficiently to the influence of insulin. And this has been found to be a significant driver of insulin resistance, which leads to metabolic syndrome, which causes diabetes. All right. So now that we really understand what is the cause of diabetes, now we can step forward a little bit in our presentation. Let me look at the time. All right, so I won't get too deep down into these other types of or should I say these symptoms of diabetes. Want to mention them very quickly. You have polyuria, which is the excessive passage of urine. You have polydipsia, which is excessive thirst, and polyphagia, which is excessive hunger. When you're diabetic, you just have you ever hear about diabetic hunger and diabetic thirst? Yeah, man, crazy, right? And the key word there is excessive hunger and thirst and the passage of urine. Other symptoms, weakness, fatigue, tingling sensation in the extremities, right? And this is going to be a very key one, right? Because what happened now, diabetes through processes that we don't have the time to describe right now. They damage the very fine blood vessels that feed the nerves, especially in the extremities, that is like the fingertips and the toes. Once you damage those blood vessels, anything, the life is in the what? Blood. Anything that has a compromised blood supply dies. So, once these blood vessels in extremities, especially, get damaged and the blood supply is compromised, the nerves begin to die. And I'm telling you, when nerves dying or they are sick, they complain a lot. And how do nerves speak to us? Through what? Pain, right? You get that burning sensation in, that numbness, that pain, especially in the fingertips and the tips of the toes, right? What's it called again? Peripheral neuropathy, right? That blurred vision, when the glucose starting to affect the proteins in the lens of the eye, and you get sugar blindness, or what you call it again, sugar glaucoma or sugar cataract, right? And the list goes on and on and on. Dry, itchy skin, unusual weight loss, darkness on both sides of the cheeks, and it can also be on the elbows and in the crevices of the neck. Acanthosis nigricans, right? All these things are warnings. I mean, there are some young people at my church, young people I love so much, and I'm warning because I can see the signs and say, hey, you're developing pre-diabetes. And then, hey, how you know? I said, this black in the neck, you try to wash it off. I said, yeah, I've been scrubbing it. I just think it's dirt. I was like, no, that is a signs that you're developing insulin resistance. And if you don't change your diet, I know what their diet is like. The cookies, the biscuits, the sodas, the excessive amount of drinks, amount of sugars, the open meat in their diet. They're highly processed foods. They are overweight. They don't exercise and they don't listen to good advice. I tell them that they are sowing sour grapes and later on their teeth is going to be set on edge when they reap a harvest of disease, right? But because of intemperance, right? Slavish, I don't even know the right word. They are slaves to their perverted appetite. They are self-indulgent, right? Bowing down to the belly god, destroying their health. But I digress. So move on, right? We're to skip this. We're to focus a bit on type 2. So as we described in type 2 diabetes, because of insulin resistance, even though the pancreas can produce insulin, the insulin is unable to do its job. It doesn't do its job. Now, what are the causes? We already mentioned fat in the diet, especially those trans fats, those fats on the body, which is usually, you can be fat and not have insulin resistance, right? Once you're overweight, because what happened, you have to remember now that the job of insulin is to get the sugars on the inside of the cell. But when it starts to provide to that cell more sugar than what is more than what is necessary for its function, it will store that sugar as what? Fat. You start to develop a lot more fat cells or fat in the cells, adipose tissues, and it start to put on weight, especially around the middle section and around the organs. Visceral fat, that's a sure sign of you developing insulin resistance, developing metabolic syndrome, and one of the fallouts for that can be type 2 uh, diabetes, right? And it has been found that where in the world where the fat intake is low, especially those processed fats, those trans fats, diabetes is very uncommon, right? So remember, I don't want you to get too carried away that it's only fat people who can get diabetes. You can be slim and suffering from insulin resistance, right? And still develop type 2 diabetes. But nevertheless, we have to be careful about the fat in the diet, the animal fat and the trans fat in the diet. And of course, as I said before, another name for Alzheimer's disease is type 3 diabetes or diabetes of the mind, right? Of the brain, not of the mind, sorry, of the brain, right? Deposits of a protein in their pancreas, which is similar to the protein deposits found in the brain tissue of Alzheimer's sufferers. And what usually happens to these proteins is that they become abnormal through a process known as glycation, where the high levels of sugar in the blood, the sugar actually begins to react with the protein, right? Normal protein that is found in the body, right? The sugar begins to bind to it through a process known as glycation. And then these proteins start behave very weird. They get very sticky and gummy. And what they start to do is that they start to come up and stick to the neurons inside of the brain, you know, messing up the signaling that's happening between the neurons. They come up on the inside of the tiny blood vessels inside the brain, and then the blood supply is impacted and neurons begin to die, right? It's a really horrible positive feedback loop that eventually destroys the brain, thereby destroying the mind of the person, and then they develop Alzheimer's disease, a really horrible way to go. Diabetes of the brain, type 3 diabetes. Some of the causes: age, family history, Down syndrome, head injuries, whiplash, aluminium, your gender, heart disease risk factors, processed foods, and fertilizers. And as you get older, your risk factors increase, or should I say the risk factor. Age itself is a risk factor, right? And if you have a family history where others who have developed it in your family put you at risk, and that is usually related not only to genetics, but death in the pot syndrome, where because you eat as you were taught, you eat like your parents eat, right? And your parents eat like their other family members, their brothers and sisters, because they were in the same household at one point in time with their parents, which are your grandparents. So those bad eating habits are passed down, and when you have nutritional deficiencies or excesses um, within the eating habits of the family, they may predispose you to various kinds of diseases, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancers, right? Till it gets down into the genome, into the genetics. But remember, genes may load the gun, but it is lifestyle and diet that pulls the trigger. Now, what should you do if my blood sugar level is dropping? If at night, morning, your blood sugar levels drop below, and 80 correlates to like 3, 4, 5, right? Millimoles per deciliter, all you need to do is eat a piece of fruit. And if the blood sugar level is below 7 at bedtime, because remember now, the reason why this information is very important is that as we tell you how to naturally reverse these conditions, right? You need to be at all times aware of what your sugar level is. Because remember that your body requires homeostasis, meaning that the sugar can be too low, which is hypoglycemia, and it can be too high, which is hyperglycemia, right? And when it is sustained, then it develops diabetes. There needs to be a range between 4 and let's say 7, right? So when you wake up in the morning after fasting all night, if you are below 4, 4, below 5, 4, you've gone down to 3 point little bit, you're gone down to 2.9. That is way too low for your sugar to be, right? You run the risk of not waking up one morning, you are in a diabetic coma, and the results of that can be very, permanent, as in death. All right. So you need to be aware of what your numbers are if you are struggling with this unsavory disease. Or at nighttime before you go to bed, because you're going to your bed now, you're not going to be eating throughout the night. You need to make sure that your blood sugar level is as such that can maintain life processes through the night. So you don't want to have a level lower than 7.8 before bedtime. You have to be very careful, especially as you are going to be applying the techniques that we are talking about. You have to be really in tune with your blood readings. You have to be in tune with your doctor because we don't put you on medication and we don't take you off. So as your readings become more and more normalized, you can't continue to take the various blood sugar medications because with our methods, methods that God has given to us, normalizing your sugar, and then you have these medications artificially dragging it down, your numbers may start to become too low. So you have to monitor your sugar very carefully, very closely, very intelligently. And as your numbers normalize, your doctor would have to either reduce your medication, and in most cases, we find they have to take them off completely because these methods work very quickly. All right. So, a big word of caution to anyone who's listening to us, who's suffering with these things, and plan to apply the methods that we are going to tell you. Now, one of our methods that we use is just a casual walk for 15 to 30 minutes after each meal, right? If you're a diabetic, we're going to tell you to go on what we call a digestive walk. What that does is that it stimulates the cells to open up and to become very responsive to the influence of insulin, thereby capping how high your sugar level can spike up after a meal, and it helps to normalize it. All right. But one of the things that you do as a diabetic, anytime you go on any exercise, you always carry a fruit in case, the exercise becomes a little bit too much and your blood sugar levels begin to drop. You start to get that dizziness, that wooziness, right? Which is a physiological symptom showing you that your sugar level is too low. You take that fruit to help bring up back that sugar level. 1 hour of continuous walking is equal to 20 units of insulin. Exercise is one of the best friends of the diabetic. All right? Just simple walking. 2 different types of walk. The walk that we just described is a digestive walk that you take after every meal to help cap the spiking of the sugar level. Because remember, when you take your sugar test postprandial after your meal, 2 hours, you want to see a nice figure like 7. You don't want to see no 8 point at 9, 10, 11, 12. So one of the techniques you want to use to keep that, that nice level is that you want to walk after your meal, right? But the next step of walking that you have to do is for your regular exercise. Every diabetic has to exercise. Why? It's equal to 20 units of insulin. And we'll be talking more about exercise as we begin to get deeper into discussing how do you reduce that sugar level and how do you restore your insulin sensitivity. Because remember, in our philosophy of health, God's way of health, we don't deal with the symptom, we deal with the root cause. And the root cause of diabetes really is metabolic syndrome because of insulin resistance. Now, how can somebody who is on a vegetarian diet get diabetes? By overindulgence in fats and oils, overindulgence in that which is good can have an adverse effect. Remember, temperance. Temperance is one of the laws of health, where we abstain from everything that is bad, and that which is good, we take into moderation. So you have to be careful about those fats. Care should be taken, however, not to use a large portion of nuts. We know that nuts and seeds are fats, and we should only have a handful of them after our meals. There are some people who say, nuts good for you, so they sit down over a bowl of cashew and they eat every last one of them. Nope. Or you get a bag of almonds. This is great. This is healthy. You sit down and you eat the entire bag one time. No, a handful of nuts after each meal is good enough. So now when we're really getting down now into how do we reverse disease, diabetes. This method that I'm about to describe to you, which you have heard me describe before, but repetition deepens impression, is the faucet method. How does it work? Now, if you came home and you saw your house flooded and water was literally running out through your house and running, what's the first thing you would do? Draw for the mop? No, the water is literally running in your house. If you try to use the mop, as soon as you mop up one section, water fills it up back, right? That is what doctors tried to do. They don't look for the cause, right? So what you ought to do, look for the cause. You look through the house and you find that you left on the faucet in the kitchen and the kitchen plug was in, right? So it flopped and it overflowed the sink. So the intelligent person, the first thing they would do is turn off the faucet. You turn off the cause. Likewise with disease, the faucet method. Find the cause and you turn off the cause. How to turn off the faucet with disease? There's always diet. Majority of the time, diet and lifestyle. So what you're gonna do if you have diabetes, cut off all flesh foods and its byproducts, all dairy products, definitely all sugar, alcohol, caffeine, teas, high fat diet, all natural and artificial sweeteners, all dried fruit as sugar content is high, because as you dry the fruit, you remove the water and you leave the sugar behind, all form of juices, right? So the diabetic don't drink juice. The diabetic don't eat sweet fruits. The diabetic don't have a high fat diet. Nothing with sugar, no dairy, no flesh, none of its byproducts, no fish. Right? Don't tell me about no Jesus eat no fish. Leave all the flesh products behind. Why? Because of the pollution of the sea, right? They have found that fish is very high. Because fishes that we eat is very high, in fat, usually all the toxins that are in the sea, and we don't have the time tonight to describe the process by which these toxins accumulate in the fish, especially the heavy metals, the cadmium, the the mercury, and the list goes on and on. Concentrate in the fish, and all of them do immense damage. Heavy metals does immense damage to the immune system. Leave the fish alone, Christians, Adventists especially, right? Leave the fresh food alone. Another one that I don't see here that should be on our list is wheat, right? The diabetic don't eat wheat, none of the wheat products. And that is because Satan has messed with the wheat through the process of GMO, genetically mutilated, not modified, genetically mutilated foods. He has messed with the wheat, right? Because they have messed with the genome of the wheat, the structure of the wheat has changed. And the particular part of it that has changed is the gluten. There are various types of gluten, and gluten is the glue that holds the structure together naturally. There's a type of gluten that the GMO causes to come to be into the wheat. I can't remember the name of it. Alpha something, can't remember. Alpha something not a pectin, right? And that type of gluten in GMO wheat has a worse effect on your sugar than sugar itself, right? So if you take a soft drink and you take a slice of genetically modified wheat bread and you eat a sandwich, and another person drink a soda, the person who eat the slice of that bread is going to have a bigger sugar spike than the person who had that soda. Can you imagine that? Brown bread we're talking about, brown bread, right? So if you have diabetes, leave the wheat alone. Cross it off your list. All breads, buns, biscuit, pastries, it doesn't matter. Leave the wheat stuff alone. All right? So these are the foods to avoid, but what you're gonna eat. Fresh fruits and vegetables, legumes, lots of garlic. Garlic is a natural vasodilator. Your nuts and your greens, your squash, your diuretic foods, that's your celery, your cauliflower, your eggplant, your melon, your grapefruit, your grape, your cucumbers. Well, all of these natural diuretic foods, because we know that one of the things that doctors give to people who are diabetics is a diuretic, right? One of the means that they try to use is to flush out the excessive sugar through the urine. All right. Well, God has given us natural diuretics, and they're right there on your list. You can note them down. You got to use salt with iodine and the trace minerals, right? These are the things you are going to be eating. Now, when they're talking about unplugging the sink. Now, using the faucet analogy, so now you have turned off the faucet, right? So the sink is no longer overflowing, but guess what? the sink is full to the brim. Can you have that? No, you can't. Because even when you turn off the water, when the sink has been overflowing, it continues to overflow, right? And that's a situation that you want to have in your kitchen. So what you're going to do, you're going to unplug the kitchen sink and drain out the excess water. That is lifestyle. You have to cleanse the body, right? You have to allow the body now to use its detox pathways efficiently, right? So you got to exercise, right? And of course, as I said before, walking is equal to 20 units of insulin. And when a diabetic goes on a walk, it's very important to carry along with you a whole fruit. So if you experience any of the symptoms of low blood sugar, headache, trembling, lightheadedness, anxiety, nausea, then you can start to eat that fruit to quickly increase the blood sugar level. And you could save your life. Very important to follow these instructions. Normally, when we have diabetic clients, we have to follow them very closely because of these issues. Continuing talking about lifestyle, walk casually for 15 to 30 minutes after each meal. Go to bed before 10 a.m. because we know that the body does its repair and restoration work between 10 and 2. Best to be in the bed by 9. You have to increase the water intake, right? Remember that the kidneys is one of the detox pathways, right? You have to help the body flush out those impurities. You have to get adequate sunlight. Sunlight is going to increase the sweating. Another detox pathway of the body is going to give you also that vitamin D. Vitamin D plays a metabolic role in every single process of the body. Every single cell has a receptor site for vitamin D. Sunlight is one of the best therapeutic things that you can do for yourself when facing any and every disease. Now we're talking about mopping it all up. Herbal treatments. This is where you get the garlic. Garlic is just basically you're taking the garlic, concentrating it, and putting it in a convenient pill form, right? Garlic. And I saw Doc prescribing recommending garlic to a few of our clients today. Right away, I have an idea of what she's facing. Very potent supplement that we have at Maranatha Health Food Store. If you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, reach out to us, get to our stores. Our client advisors will be able to assist you in getting the gardeners and advising you in how to use it. Another important herb. Now, I forgot to say, mopping it all up. Herbs are the mops, right? So after if you have turned off the faucet, unplug the kitchen sink, now you're going to go and you're going to get your mop and you're going to start cleaning up the place. That is the role that herbs play. Remember, we said earlier that we have to assist Mother Nature, right? Right? The words of inspiration say that we should assist Mother Nature in her work, right? And herbs are the method that God has given us to assist the body, to assist nature in her work of healing, mopping it up. Excellent herb, Gymnea sylvestre, right? We don't normally have it in tab form, nor we normally have it in the pure herb form where you're going to make a herbal tea, right? Is GTF chromium, flaxseed, 2 tablespoons freshly ground each day. Remember, if you're using flaxseed, make sure you have the whole seed and you're growing and you're grinding fresh each day. You can, even if you have a little bit extra, you can store it in the fridge, but make sure you use it within 2 to 3 days. Because once the oxygen gets inside of the crushed seed, the process of rancification starts to take place very quickly, right? So do not buy flax meal, buy flax seed. Grind it yourself, use it up within 2 to 3 days, store any excess in the fridge. These are the herbs that are going to assist nature in her process of healing the human body. Hibiscus tea, pumpkin seeds, lecithin granules, right? Helps to dissolve the fat, helps to control the diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. Artichokes and string beans, especially, need to be in the diet. Having a handful of pumpkin seeds at the end of each meal, and of course, the hibiscus tea being part of your herbal tea. All of these things can be found in our stores. Don't put your trust in the pharmacist, put your trust in the word of God come out to our stores, come and see the client advisors, book a consultation, or if you think you have, if you have been trained as a medical missionary, then certainly come out and get your surprise. Vitamin B12. And this is the vitamin I've been trying to get to all night. We want to highlight an excellent supplement that we have from Berry Treasure, which is B Complete, having all the B vitamins in a high potency, high availability form. When it comes to dealing with diabetes, vitamin B1 and I believe B12 are the two most important vitamins that you will need to assist nature in our work of healing, especially when it comes to reversing that peripheral neuropathy, when it comes to restoring the those tiny blood vessels, those capillaries at the ends of our extremities. The role of the B vitamins cannot be overemphasized in this work of healing. And we have an excellent product for that, B complex. And not only is it good for the diabetic, it's also good for a host of other diseases. But even if you don't suffer from any disease and you need a picker upper, you're feeling lethargic and slow in the mornings, I'm telling you, this coming like nitro for the human body picks you right up, is your energy to go throughout the course of the entire day, even if you're not dealing with a diseased any disease process, any disease pathology in the body. Be complete. Excellent supplement. And it is a supplement of the day-to-day, and we recommend it to every single person online, whether you're sick or not, to get a bottle of Berry Treasure Be Complete. And as you can see here, all forms of beans and whole grains, and guess what? It's plenteous in these. Your B vitamins. Nice thing. B3 used to reverse type 1, type 1.5, and 2, and also the B1 and the B12. Very important B vitamins in reversing diabetes, 1, 1.5, 2. Vitamin D. We also have a new product. I just saw it today. Very concentrate, high potency vitamin D mixed with K2. I can't believe it, Doc. My name is slipping me. Doc, what's the name of that new one you got again? New vitamin D complex that we have. I don't want to misname it. Doc, are you there? Very high. Each tablet has 10,000 IUs and 250 micrograms of K2, which is a very important trace mineral to help the body uptake the vitamin D3, D, and to allow it to do its work of healing and restoration in the morning. Another type of treatment that we can use in reversal of diabetes is hydrotherapy. And I have 1 more minute before I have to end this presentation because it's now 8:46. So we are at the end of our time tonight. Hydrotherapy for the diabetic. Foot care is very important. You have to clean your feet thoroughly every day. You would notice that the diabetic is very susceptible to foot ulcers. They are very susceptible to funguses. They are very susceptible to bacterial infections. Why is that? Let me take one hand. Somebody, quickly, tell me why you think the diabetic is so susceptible to these things. Let me see if I have a hand quick. Anybody brave enough? We have to give out a quadruple A if you can answer this question. Any hands? No brave person? Michelle, you see any hand there? All
No,
right,
I don't
seeing
see
that
any.
you
Oh,
are
Lady Joan Paul just raised her hand and CPGL.
all right, Lady Joan Paul, let us hear it quickly. Unmute.
Is it because they have lost you call it sensation in their limbs? The
Well,
nerves
I
died?
would Yes, that is secondary. So I'll give you a double A, but I need somebody for the quadruple A. So that's a secondary. So they don't have the sensation as much. The nerves are dying, right? So they are easy to injure themselves. So normally what happens is that they get, them bunks them foot or them stub them toe or they get a little scratch. And then all of a sudden that little scratch over time broke out in this big old sore, broke out in this big old ulcer, right? The toenails full of fungus, athlete's foot. What is driving it? CPGL.
Yes, I finally
Come,
get to,
Sister Singer,
yes, I
Sister
finally get
Lashley,
to
go ahead.
open. Yeah, because there is no blood flow in that area. The blood is restricted from there. And
Still
the set,
secondary. Still
yeah.
secondary. I will give you a triple A. Nobody's getting a quadruple A tonight. What do microorganisms like
Blood cells.
funguses and bacteria love? What do they love to feed on? Hmm? Sandra, I gave you a big clue. Go ahead. Sandra, unmute your mic.
Sugar. Sugar.
Sugar. Exactly, sugar. So because the blood has an abnormally high concentration of sugar, they are feeding these microorganisms, right? So the fungus will just run away grow. The bacteria will just run away grow. Why? The blood is feeding it sugar. So the moment you get a little cut, right? The, the bacteria and the funguses are ready to take up residence and cause an infection. And then because the blood is so sluggish, right? The blood vessels now secondarily speaking of not bringing no nutrients, not bringing no oxygenated blood. The 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 lymphatic system is very sluggish. Your immune system is very slow. They are quickly able to establish themselves, and before you know it, you have a big old sore. You have a big old ulcer, piece of your foot eat out from the infection. It's the sugar that is driving it, right? Secondarily caused by the nerve damage and the circulation damage. But because the microorganisms are well fed and they have an environment in which to grow, low oxygen, high sugar, acidic environment, very quick to take over. So you're all correct, but no quadruple A's tonight, but you all understand what I'm saying. So you got to keep those, keep the foot clean, reduce the chances of the bacteria on the skin causing an opportunistic infection from any slight damage that may have taken place, right? Where is it? Have a foot bath every night using lukewarm water and mild soap. Paying special attention to the area between the toes. Have to keep it clean because you know that fungus and bacteria like what? Moist areas. So you have to make sure that the environment is not there that will encourage their development. And you have to dry them carefully and make sure that they're not damp and make sure that there is not much damage. Okay? And you can increase the circulation by submerging both arms up to mid bicep in cold water. Once finished, warm up your arms by rubbing them briskly with a towel, and this can be done several times a day. And we must stop here, folks. We have to be temperate in all things. We are completely out of time, but want to keep in mind the key points. If you're diabetic, if you're sick with anything else, as a matter of fact, revert to what the councils have said to us. Do not put your trust in man, put your trust in God. Do not trust these man-made poisonous medications. The doctor is good. He can diagnose, no problem. He can do the blood test. You can know your numbers, no problem. But I would highly discourage you on the authority of the words of inspiration not to depend on the poisonous drug medications, right? What should you do? Ascertain the cause of the disease, work intelligently to reverse these conditions, unhealthful habits, cut them off, right? Stop this spirit of self-indulgence, this satanic spirit of self-indulgence where you prefer to bow down to the belly god, right? Serving the belly god with your fork and your spoon and your knife, eating to your own destruction. God is gonna judge you. You will have to give a, an answer as to why you have destroyed the temple of the Holy Ghost. Why have you robbed God of his time in terms of that you spend so much time sick and disease? You can't go there and do the work of God because you're too sick, right? Your mind has been impacted. Nerves are the only channel through which heaven can communicate with man and affect his innermost soul and thereby change his character into the divine similitude, right? Why are you blocking up heaven with your soda and your cheesecake, right? And your bun and cheese and your chicken, right? We have to let go of these things. And eventually you reap the reward. You know, you sow the bitter, the sour grapes, and in the end, your teeth is set on edge because you reap the reward in disease. If that has happened to you, we thank God that He's merciful and He's forgiven. If you will hearken diligently unto His voice and you do all His requirements, He will put none of the diseases of the Egyptians upon you, right? Use God's methods. Be obedient like Naaman, dip the 7 times, obey the laws of health, right? Turn off the faucet, leave the Egyptian diet below, take up the diet of Eden. And of course, all of us, we are seeking to go to Eden restored, right? So start eating like you're in heaven right now, okay? Get out, do that exercise, change the lifestyle, drink the water, go to your bed on time, right? And as I'm speaking to you guys, I'm also speaking to myself, right? Get out to the stores, you know, that be complete. All of us need it, especially if you're tired, especially if you do a lot of brain work, right? If you have diabetes, definitely need to be complete, right? The garlinis, the hibiscus, this Gymnea silvestri, all these products we have in store to help God's children. Stop buying the drug medication. Leave the metformin alone and use those things that God, by His grace and His mercy and because of His infinite love for us, His children, have provided for us to use. I hope the presentation has been helpful to God's children. And now that you have been educated on these matters, go ye forth and sin no more, lest a worse thing, lest a worse thing come upon thee. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we are so thankful, oh God, for your goodness, your grace, and your mercy, and your ever-loving kindness towards us, the fallen children of men. We are so thankful that because of that great love, you have provided this information whereby if we have become sick because of our own disobedience, we are reaping the just reward of our intemperance, of our perverted appetites, that you have still made a way of escape for your children. I pray, oh God, that we will use these methods intelligently, that we will submit ourselves as a living sacrifice to you, oh God, and we will put on the altar of sacrifice every hurtful indulgence, every perverted appetite, every sense of laziness and impatience, not willing to do what God has commanded because it takes too long. We don't see the results quickly. It's so much easier to pop a pill. We ask, oh God, that you will forgive us of our waywardness and that as we obey, you will put the spirit of restoration, that you will become to us the God that healeth, and that our healing will arise quickly, and that we'll be able to go forth and do the finishing work of the preaching of the everlasting gospel quickly with energy. And as people see and behold how healthy and robust and intelligent we are, they will want to come and find out what is it that we are doing, and we'll be able to effectively share with them. And as we share with them, we will reap into the storehouse a harvest of souls to the glory of God. This is our prayer. We ask it all in Jesus' name in thanksgiving. Amen. It is now 8:56. I will allow for exactly 4 minutes for any questions that the children of God may have. And we just wrap it up exactly at 9 o'clock. Any questions quickly?
You mentioned, hello, brother. Thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned about wheat. I wanted to make sure I heard you. What did you say? Can you
Yes,
repeat? Thank you.
wheat. So what has happened with the wheat is that, in the spirit of prophecy, Ellen White draws back the curtain and she actually speaks to the fact that Satan literally had a meeting about how best can he destroy God's children. Long story short, he decided that wheat would be the food that he attacked. Henceforth, entered hybridization and the GMO wheat, where they actually go in and they mess with the genetic code of the wheat. What has happened is that it has mutated the gluten in the wheat. That is the GMO wheat, mutated the gluten, and it is of a form now that has a higher number on the glycemic index than sugar, meaning that GMO wheat, will more negatively impact your sugar. That means causes it to spike very high more than sugar itself. So that is a problem with wheat with the diabetic, right? Um, its glycemic index number is extraordinarily high, very high. I can't remember exactly. I have the number somewhere in another presentation, but we're out of time. So you just have to trust me on that one. Or you can just do your own research. It is right there on the internet for you to see. Do a quick research. Look for the glycemic index of foods and look for wheat, and it is right there for you to see. And it's right, all the research is right there on the internet. So if you have diabetes, leave the wheat alone. Next hand. Sister Lashley, go ahead. Sister Lashley, go ahead quickly.
Yes. Well, I just get to unmute.
Make it
You know
quick.
what? Yeah. Yes, I'm making it quick.
Make it quick.
I am. That's the same question I was going to ask
Okay.
the lady before me ask this very said thing, question, because I've always known I've been a diabetic for over 30 years. And when I just diagnosed as a diabetic, I always know that they said you have to eat the brown stuff, like the brown rice, the brown bread, etc. And I have been partaking of the wheat from since then, and up to today I'm still eating the wheat, but I never really eat the pure whole wheat. I always add other things in it. So I don't know if this is what balancing out, but I've always used the brown bread, the whole wheat bread. I make my own bread and I add
Oh,
all
but
my
you
other
see,
things
this
in.
wheat, what we're telling about, whether brown or white, as a matter of fact, we're not even thinking about white, because if it is white, it is
Yeah,
not right.
I
All
don't eat the
right.
white.
But wheat
No.
as a whole, you have to leave wheat alone as a diabetic. You have to leave wheat alone,
I
right?
heard that.
Because it causes the spiking of the blood sugar. And Sister Lashley, as a senior member of this platform, you need to call us. That diabetes need to go in the name of the Lord. You cannot carry
I
it
hear
in
you.
2025. Give us a
Well,
call, Sis Lashley,
I'm
off
not.
the air. Diabetes is
I
too
am
easy
surviving,
to
my
beat up.
brother. I am surviving still by the grace of God. He's sustaining me. So I am not going to fight over that. So as long as he gives me life, I am here. Thank you.
All right, call us Sister Lashley, off the
All
air.
right.
All right,
All right.
handshakes. Go
I
ahead.
mm,
We have 1 more minute, and quickly, 30 seconds. All right, Anne, you're not ready yet. Veronica and
Yes,
Williams, go
Thank you
ahead.
I
for
just get
taking.
I just get unmute now. I am asking, do I must have to take sugar? I do not take sugar for about some 2 years now. Do I must have to take sugar?
No, you don't eat sugar. I don't use sugar at all. None at
Okay.
all. If I need to sweeten something, I use natural sweeteners. Honey, you have honey, you have maple syrup, you have list goes on. I'm rushing so I can't think straight. But
This.
there, the host of natural sugars to use instead
Of
of the
rush.
processed sugar.
Can I
All
ask
right.
something?
Sure. Go ahead quickly.
how
Um, Now I also use, instead of using the regular
I'm about to lose internet
wheat,
connection.
I use
Great.
the mostly of the ancient wheat.
Grains. Yeah, the ancient grains. Yes, that is safe as long as
Grains.
it's not
Asian
GMO.
grains. I'm so sorry. Yeah, you're right. And that's basically how I make my breads.
that is fine. It is the GMO wheat specifically. But because it is so hard to find non-GMO wheat, we does normally recommend if you're diabetic, best not to take the chance and just let it be. Just use the other forms of carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, which are plenty. Wheat is just one out of an entire kaleidoscope of what you can use. So we recommend you just leave it alone until you have been healed. Okay? I think there's one hand more that I'll take. Her hand was up. I don't see where her hand gone. She had her
I'm
hand up for a
here.
little while.
I'm
Veronica, yes.
here.
Go ahead quickly. You're the last
Thank
hand.
you. Thank you. My internet just came back. I lost it and it came back. Well, I put my question in the chat, but I heard you referencing something about the wheat, and that is one of my favorite quotes. So I was going to read this one sentence quote about the wheat and then ask my question. It comes from
Go ahead.
Counsels for the Church, page 101, paragraph 5 and 6, and it's under Satan's greatest strategy. Says he would take the fruit of the vine, also wheat, and other things given by God as food, and would convert them into poisons, which would ruin man's physical, mental, and moral powers, and so overcome the senses that Satan should have full control. And so, for that very reason, I'm actually trying to become gluten free. But I believe that wheat is going to be the death, quote unquote, of many a folk, because it says, and so overcome the senses that
Right.
Satan should have full control. And it says it will ruin man's physical, mental, and moral powers. But my question here, my question is gone from the chat because I got kicked out. But my question was, are there any supplements to protect the kidneys, or anything to help with sugar management for those with type 1 diabetes? Thank you.
Yes, there are. But there's a reason why I skipped over type 1, because that one is way more involved, because now type 1 diabetes, now you are dealing with an autoimmune process. So the philosophy and the approach is a completely different one. Autoimmune diseases begin in the gut, right? It is an uh uh what's the word I want? It's a dysfunction of the immune system where the immune system has been turned against itself. And in this case, the immune system is attacking the the beta cells in the process in the pancreas, right? So you basically have to turn off the autoimmune process. So when it comes to autoimmune, it's about balancing back the gut through the gut microbiome, the gut flora, right? Using probiotics and the biotics. It's about tampering down that inflammation, because anytime you have autoimmune, you're talking about inflation. The B vitamins are going to be very important. The D3K2, very important. So those supplements in a nutshell, there's a lot more to it, but we're out of time. And it doesn't make sense like get into it without having to without being able to fully explain. Maybe what we need to do is to do a presentation and focus on type 1, because a totally different type of approach in terms of the course of treatment. But in a nutshell, probiotics, prebiotics, the B vitamins, the D3, the K2, the anti-inflammatories. All right. So that's all we have. And I want to add on to what you were saying with that statement, that quote that you made. What we children of God need to understand now is that this battle is a battle that takes place in the mind. It's a battle over the mind. It's a battle over the choices that you're gonna make, whether you're gonna choose to serve God or you're gonna choose to serve man. Will you live by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God? Will God control the mind, or will Satan control the mind through the ages of self? All these are decisions. All of these depend upon character, right? And where does the mind sit? The mind literally sits in a physical body called the brain, which is in the head. What is the brain made of? It's made up of neurons, right? And and it passes electrical energy. What is electrical energy dependent upon? Minerals. Neurons are cells. What do cells need? Blood, right? It needs a good supply for it to bring to it all the nutrients, all the oxygen, and all that it needs to run properly, right? So anything that affects the blood is going to affect the neurons, right? Anything that affects the neurons is going to affect the mind, right? Which is what God communicates with to affect the innermost man, which is the character. And what's it that affects blood, right? What you eat, digestion, right? So what you eat is literally going to have a direct effect upon your mind. It's going to have an effect upon your character. It is going to affect how God is able to communicate with you and develop your character into the divine similitude, or it is going to enhance how Satan is able to control and manipulate the mind, and instead of developing a Christ-like character, what you get instead is the image of Satan, right? This is how it works. Anything that affects your blood, the quality of the blood, the circulation of the blood, right? Diet, exercise, dress, right? Which comes under dress reform and temperance, right? How you rest. All of these things are inputs that go into how you are going to develop your character and what type of character you're going to develop, whether it's the Christ-like or Satan's image, right? One out of the two. And this is why diet and appetite play such a significant role in our salvation. There are people who preach that diet and health reform are not salvation, like are salving, meaning related to your salvation. Lies directly related to your salvation. You recognize behind the fall of, every time the Bible talks about a big fall, whether it's Adam and Eve, whether it is the antediluvian world, Noah's time before the flood, or it was Sodom and Gomorrah, or the three Hebrew worthies, which are an antitype for us today. What was involved? Diet. Eve and Adam ate something that they were not supposed to do. What were the antediluvians and Sodom and Gomorrah doing? Right? Eating and drinking. They knew not when the flood took them away. Sodom and Gomorrah for fullness of bread, right? The three Hebrew words for which we are an antitype, they would not eat of the king's food. And they were the only ones who did not bow down to the image of the beast. Are we expecting another image to the beast to be set up today? Friends, I'm telling you, the issue of diet is literally life and death in this life and the world to come. Let us choose correctly. Let us follow the inspiration. God has given us everything that we need to know to live well in this life and to live forever in the life that is to come. It only requires our faith, our obedience, our diligence, our patience, our persistence. Let us not be lost because of our appetites, our perverted appetites. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you. We have come to the end of tonight's presentation, and we welcome you next week, same time, same place. God bless.
Night, everyone.
Hey, good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Signs of the times are everywhere, and there's a brand new feeling in the air. Keep your eyes upon the eastern sky.
Hello?
Lift up your head, redemption draweth nigh. Hello, everybody. Good night.
God bless you,
Good
Sister Lashley. God bless everyone. Have a good night.
night. Good
All
night.
right.